Thank you everyone for joining today. My name is Aldis Krachinas. I'm the Executive Director of our programs here. And our topical webinar this month is on financial planning and scholarships. I've been at Purdue now 17 years and in this role for 10 years. And I've worked with students often on these types of questions. I hope myself and our panelists can answer any questions that you may have, because getting the financial plan put together, getting the financial support is what I would consider one of the two biggest challenges that students have in starting an executive MBA program. Well, today we're focused, of course, on the Purdue EMBA program. I suspect that what we'll be sharing is quite similar for pretty much any type of EMBA program across the nation in terms of the financial aid processes at the university. FAFSA, as Kirsten will say, is, happens everywhere. Teresa Harris for Veterans Affairs, again, the systems are fairly standard, I believe. And then our alumni, of course, will be sharing their perspectives. So speaking about our panel, I'm very proud and happy to be joined by two of our alums and two colleagues from here at Purdue University. So I'm going to have each of them introduce themselves briefly, and then we'll be hearing more from them later on today. So if Anna, you could get us going, please.
Absolutely, thanks, Aldis. I'm Anna Dietrich. I'm a 2011 graduate, actually out of the College of Technology with a bachelor's in organizational leadership, and then made the decision to go back through the EMBA program, graduating in 2019. For the last 10 years, I've been with Cummins Incorporated, spending about the last 9 years in Southern Indiana in our global headquarters. And then about a year ago, I relocated to the Minneapolis area, where I'm currently the HR leader of our Cummins power generation plant. Thank you so much for having me this afternoon.
Awesome, thank you. Brian?
Yeah, hi everyone, Nollis and team, thanks for having me. Excited to kind of talk a little bit today and answer any questions. I graduated in 2020 from the EMBA program, so pretty recent and right before the pandemic. And I've been about 5 years now with the company I'm at currently. We just went through a major acquisition about a year ago. I'm from the Cleveland area.
Awesome, thank you. Teresa?
Hello, everyone. My name is Teresa Harris. I am representing the Veteran Success Center today. My title is VA Certifying Official. The VA calls us SCOs. This is my 10th year with Purdue University, and I've been in this SCO role that entire time.
Awesome, thank you. And then Kirsten.
I am Kirsten Reynolds, and I am the administrator that worked with your program, the EMBA. And I've been with Purdue for coming up on 15 years.
Awesome, awesome. So together between the Purdue team, gosh, we got about 40 years at Purdue collectively, and then Brian and Anna from different cohorts as well. Different types of companies can be sharing their insights. I'm going to take a few minutes right now just to give people an overview of the program, since our approach and format is a bit unique, and then we'll jump into this main topic about the financial aspects of programs. So quick overview of Purdue. We just celebrated 150th anniversary. We're part of the Big Ten Athletic Conference, so big deal. And we just had the tournament in Indianapolis. Purdue didn't do as well as we had hoped, but things happen the way they do. While today we're focused on the Purdue EMBA program, keep in mind that Purdue is a leader in over 200 different areas. And so as a student of Purdue, you have access to all these different resources. We have a large alumni group across the whole world, 600,000 Purdue alums, close to 50,000 Krannert alums, and about 3,000 executive alums, and they're in different chapters, both within the US, certainly one in Cleveland and one in the Twin Cities, I'm sure, and many, many other places, not just in the US, but around the world. So while your cohort may be 25 to 30 people, keep in mind you're part of this much broader Purdue family around the world. And one thing that I've learned as I've traveled, I always have my Purdue clothing on, of course, is you're going to find Purdue alums everywhere. and they will always do a shout out to boiler up to you. And so you have that common bond to them immediately. And that's always a great conversation starter and part of that much broader network. In terms of what our cohorts look like, so here's a 3-year running average across our 2 executive MBA programs. We require a minimum of 5 years of work experience to be in the program, because that's the point we see individuals start having more management or leadership responsibilities. Certainly no maximum cap in terms of years of work experience. And we've had people in the program with 35 plus years of work experience, some celebrating their 60th birthday, in fact, while in the program. The positions that people work in while in the program are very much reflective of the years of work experience that they have. And so they are from analyst on up. In terms of industry, no one industry dominates the representation of the cohort, partly because, as we'll see, people can and do live anywhere in the world as they go through the program. And then geography, about a quarter based in Indiana, another quarter in the Midwest, another quarter throughout the US, and a quarter international. So it's a nice geographic spread of backgrounds. And by increasing geographic diversity, we increase diversity of economic experiences, of functional backgrounds, and of course, as we see in terms of industry represented. Let's talk briefly about the format. Our format is blended learning, where it's part online and part on campus. I'm proud to say that Purdue knew about online learning before COVID. In fact, this has been our format for 10 years. Interestingly, and a shout out to Purdue, we are, as far as I know, the largest university to stay open for on-campus instruction throughout the whole COVID crisis. So many adjustments that we've made, many things that I know my colleagues are also proud of. Within our 2 EMBA programs, both are 19 months from start to finish. Our traditional EMBA that Anna and Brian are alums of starts in the fall, and our global EMBA starts every spring. In fact, we just had our newest global EMBA cohort start last March. We start with an online launch over 4 days, during which you meet the members of your cohort, of your first study team. You learn about the technology that we use in the program. It's all changed since Anna graduated. So we use Zoom as we're doing today. We use Brightspace as our platform for content delivery, and we use MS Teams for program information. So many of these, of course, are now industry standards. And then you take a class session for each of the courses of your first module. So you end the week with a good connection to your fellow students, to the faculty and staff, setting you up for success. After that comes the pre-residency portion. During that time, you're working in your study teams on individual and team-based assignments. You'll have weekly team meetings, of course, and then also you're doing readings and watching videos that faculty have prepared for you. With that foundation set, you come to campus for the what we call residency. Some schools call it Emergent Weeks. It's the same idea. And so the idea during the 1 or 2 weeks on campus, you're having your main classes, of course, where appropriate and possible, we do company visits. We bring in guest speakers. That, of course, has been able to continue in different formats. Career management, we're now working with a company called Right Management, where they work on assessments, personal brand development, and executive career coaching, and then social events as well in an appropriate and safe setting. After the campus portion is done, you return home. You have 1 week to prepare for final exams. And those exams are over a 9-day period. They are online, and you choose when you take those exams. They're typically timed anywhere from 2 to 4 hours. So what's critical to understand is that the pre-residency and then the exam period is flexible to your schedule. Some of you may be morning people, maybe evening people, maybe balancing family commitments and work commitments. This can work within whatever schedule that you have. After exams are done, you'll typically have a 1-week break and then start the next pre-residency with new study teams. We think it's important to not only bring together people from diverse backgrounds, but ensure that they are working with each other. So the format of being on campus for 1 or 2 weeks at a time gives you those opportunities to work with your fellow students. But by changing the teams each module, you work with as many different people as possible during your time in the program. Let me do a quick deep dive now into the two formats that we have. Our traditional EMBA starts every fall, and we call it traditional because traditionally people expect to come to the same location for their residencies. And so you have 5 residencies here in West Lafayette, and then you end with a 2-week residency abroad. Anna's group, gosh, I'm not remembering where you went. Help me out.
For our for the international trip,
Yes,
yeah, we did Brazil and Chile.
Brazil and Chile. And then Brian, you did Europe, Spain, correct?
We were in Spain. Yes, that's right.
So Brian was one of the last groups, I think, from the US to be on an international education trip right before COVID took place. This year, we didn't have the international trip, but we expect to have one again in March of next year. And what's neat, as Brian and Anna's examples show, it's not the same location. The cohort chooses from a range of options. The bonus with this particular program is that you have different electives to choose from, and some are what we call immersion electives, where it's not the whole cohort taking an elective, but just some of you. So your immersion elective may have 10 people in it. And so it's a deeper dive into a topic of interest for you. Our global program, we go to 7 countries on 4 continents during the time of the program. So not only do you get that learning from the faculty and of course the curriculum, but you have the cultural and business immersion, seeing different business models in action, interactions with senior management as you do company visits, and of course the cultural immersion as well. Here you earn not just one MBA, but 2 MBAs, one from Purdue and one from our Dutch partner, TIAS. The curriculum is fairly similar across the 2 programs. In both you have the networking, the executive career coaching, and career management support, and both have a capstone consulting project as well. So some similarities, but some definite differences. And then let's take a deeper dive before we start talking with our panel about what a typical week may look like. So classes are typically Monday to Saturday. There's a few exceptions to that. And I'm sure Ann and Brian are just nodding their head like, yeah, we did this a lot of times. So you have 2 classes in the morning, 2 in the afternoon, typically a different topic between morning and afternoon to give you a bit of that mental variety. We have breakfast and lunch, of course, here provided. And then in addition, we'll try to have a company visit that corresponds to the curriculum. So we've gone, for example, to the Amazon Distribution Center, not too far from campus. Amazon certainly well known for its distribution, logistics systems, and that very much fits within the operations course that the students would be taking that particular week. Evenings, free evening just means we haven't planned anything. Faculty may have assignments for you. And then where possible, we've done basketball games in the past. With the more recent cohort, again, COVID restrictions. So we did trivia night, something Ann and Brian's cohorts did not do, but we found a very large area that we could be socially distanced and had a really, really good time. So again, it's those interactions, not just within the classroom, but outside of the classroom, where you're going to form those bonds, get to know each other, and form these lifelong friendships. I will emphasize that everyone stays on campus. It is not a commuter back and forth, because in the evening, you never know, a project may come up, or Anna may be walking down the hall and Brian says, hey, we're going to go out for dinner. Do you want to join us? It's those unplanned interactions that we believe are just as important as what happens in the classroom. So I'd ask the panel to consider these particular topics, focusing on the financial systems. So I'm going to start first with my colleagues here at Purdue, and Kirsten, if you can share with our audience today a little bit about navigating financial aid at Purdue University.
Okay, so I get a lot of questions of what's the best route to go, whether to go with the federal loans or private loans. And I advise the students that it's all individual. You have to weigh what your plans are, like whether or not you're going to go work for a nonprofit or not, what your credit looks like. So if you have really good credit, I tend to steer the students towards private. But that doesn't always work. I had one student that had his company reimburse him, and he was more concerned with the most expedient way to get his funding. So he went, even though the federal loans were with the higher interest rate, he went that route because it was more expedient, knowing that his company is going to reimburse him. He didn't have to worry about the interest rate. So it just depends on your individual circumstances. And what I'm going to share, to do a real quick tour of our website. Okay, so this is our homepage here. So it's purdue.edu/DFA. And I would like to show you, I have a sample calendar of how the loans, whether you do a private or a federal, we try to use the same calendar, so it's easier on the students and it fits with our system. So that, that's another reason why. Okay, so we have prospective students, and you want to go to distance. And then you want to look for graduate students and then credit programs. So the calendars for both the global and the traditional executive MBA is off schedule as far as our programmers are concerned. So we have to make some Band-Aids and some bubblegum sticks to make it work with our system. So sometimes the federal loan eligibility for an academic year is $20,500. So sometimes I'll have to split it into thirds. Other times you can have it in half. It has to do related to the number of weeks that you're in class. So this is the calendar for the executive MBA, the traditional one, and then the one right underneath is the global. Some other Band-Aid issues that we have to deal with is I have to monitor the progress that you make at the end of each module before I can allow disbursement for the next module. And so I have to wait on grades being posted and then shared with me, and then I can release the holds on your account. So just bear with us and be patient. Email is fine if you're concerned, and I recommend you email me directly, because these two programs are so different that I don't want you getting incorrect information from our general staff that answer the phones. And Aldous will share my email with you, and I try to respond within 2 business days. All right, I'm going to go back up and show 2 other pages here. Under types of aid are loans, and we go into detail about the federal loans and private. These 2 programs are not eligible for our Purdue loans. Those are focused for undergraduates. So the federal loans are up here, private loans are down here. Click on. As a graduate student, all your loans are unsubsidized. And the interest rates, it's called, what the government calls it, a fixed variable. So July 1st, fix the interest rate for any loan that's originated during that calendar year from July 1st to June 30th. So it has one interest rate. If you borrow, you could borrow 2 times in both of these programs. So you could have a slightly different interest rate on both of those loans. And so July 1st of next year, the interest rate may change. There's also an origination fee that's taken off the top of the loans. Here we go. So for the federal direct loan is 1.066. And then this is where the Grad Plus gets into expensive. The Grad Plus is designed to fill in the gap that the federal direct loan doesn't cover, but they do check your credit. All right, so the interest rate right now is 5.3, and here's the origination fee, 4.26. So it is an expensive loan. So if you have really good credit, this is where I recommend that you go the private loan route. But there's a caveat. If you're interested in working for a nonprofit, there is a public service loan forgiveness program, and that is only eligible with the federal loan programs. So keep that in mind when you decide. Private loans, our office is not allowed to recommend any particular lender, but I do find that credit unions have a slightly better rate. And it doesn't really matter what credit union, because they belong to a consortium. So the consortium sets the interest rates and the services that the credit unions provide, or any of the larger banks. We do have 2 search engines to help you decide if you want to go the private loan route. And that's down here. The InvestEd will give you your actual rate, but it doesn't have very many lenders in it because they charge a fee for the lenders to participate in this service. Elm Select is wide open. It has almost all the lenders that participate in the private loan, private education loan programs, but it doesn't give you a rate. It gives you the range. So it gives you the lower interest rate to the highest interest rate, but it has more, has pretty much all the lenders in there, and you can see the little things that they do to make their product more appealing. Like Discover, for instance, will give like a 0.25% interest rate reduction if you turn in your grades at the end of every term, that kind of thing. All right, so that's the quick tour. And if you have specific questions, feel free to email me. I'm happy to answer your questions. And I'll stop sharing.
Thank you, Kirsten. I did share your email within the chat box. I know one question that will come up somewhat frequently is for people who are not within the US or not permanent residents. Is there anything that you can comment on that today?
Yes, and in that case, I do recommend a particular lender. I recommend Prodigy because they're not US citizens, so I won't get in trouble with the Department of Ed. We have an excellent working relationship with Prodigy. I will look up their website and put that in the chat for you.
Awesome, thank you. And I know, yeah, some of our students have used them before, so certainly a name that's familiar to me. So thank you. We'll keep monitoring if people do have questions for you. At this point, I'll hand it over to Teresa. And if you can share from the veterans perspective, I know you work with our veterans. About 15% of a typical cohort will have veterans. So I know you're working with every group that comes in, and your support is very much appreciated. So what would you like to share with veterans using veterans benefits?
Okay, so I'll just share how to reach us. Basically, I'm not going to go into specific details because, as all the veterans know, it's military education benefits are based on a lot of different factors, and there's a lot of variable depending on what they've earned and the benefits they're using. So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail there. I'll tell a little bit about our office and then how to reach us. So our office currently has 4 full-time staff members. We have 3 student work studies, 2 are veterans, and the other is a dependent of a veteran, all using GI Bill. Our office is the Veteran Success Center is physically located on the 2nd floor of the Purdue Memorial Union, room 284. We are open 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, closed for lunch from 12 to 1. GI Bill benefit questions should be, you can get some of your answers from our website, which is purdue.edu/veterans, or through the email box, dog tags at purdue.edu. I can share those in the chat box. If you intend to use GI Bill or other military benefits, please email our general email box. You should be sure to include your specific program that you're interested in. As Kirsten mentioned, both programs are very different. Some of the answers may be the same based on the number of weeks in the program, the credit hours, and so on, but we need specific information to be accurate about our answers. As you know, benefits are paid based on the enrollment dates and other factors. These programs don't follow the standard semester term, so we ask that when you contact us, please share your Purdue ID number and your program name, your term dates that you're inquiring about, to ensure that all of us can respond as accurately as possible. I should also mention that the more time that you allow for processing benefits, the smoother the claim will be. As you know, working with the VA, there's time on our side that's involved, and there's time on their side to process benefits. And usually turnaround time on education benefits is about 4 to 6 weeks on average. So we need a little time there. I'm happy to take any specific questions offline or via the chat box. And thank you for your service and your time today.
Thank you, Teresa. Is there any question that you find comes up frequently when veterans or their family members are reaching out to you?
I think they're all very different. I mean, we get the same questions, you know, as far as education benefits. They're just saying, how does it apply to, how does the program pay for my BAH, the monthly housing allowance? And it does pay very well. I have reviewed both the IMM or the international program and the EMBA program, and they will, for the most part, pay full-time monthly housing allowance for both of the programs throughout all of the modules. So I did look at that and review that. And that's usually one of the highest priority questions that people have regarding these two programs, as to how that happens, and how it's certified specifically. So I'll be happy to answer any of those questions, though, individually as well.
Okay. And then one that I sometimes get, though less so now than before, people would ask about the yellow ribbon program. My understanding is that's applicable if in-state and out-of-state tuition are different, but because both of our programs that we're discussing today, it's the same tuition, that's not applicable. Is that a fair statement?
Correct. So if the student uses Chapter 33 post 9/11 benefits have a yellow ribbon benefit associated with them, these programs are billed at a flat rate. So the yellow ribbon doesn't apply because we're a public institution. The yellow ribbon isn't a factor, and their GI Bill will cover it, their entitlement percentage.
Awesome, thank you. So I have a good memory, good thing.
Yep.
So thank you. And again, I've been working with Teresa for a number of years, and she guides people well. And as she said, you know, don't wait till a week before the program start to submit documents. I also worked for the government in a previous lifetime, and they got systems, and we're not going to change those systems. So making sure you get information to Teresa in a timely manner is going to be critical for you. So thank you, Teresa. So I've started sharing slides again. Hopefully they are visible. So creating a financial plan. So that's where I'm going to move to Brian and Anna on these questions. So I'm really sort of breaking it out into two parts, because it's with our program, you definitely have to have discussions internally. And I know Brian and Anna certainly did that. And people aren't sure how to do that. I think it's sort of nerve-wracking. Even if you've had the same boss for 5 years, it's one thing to show up for work. It's another to say, you know, help me out financially or otherwise. So I'm going to have Anna go first, if that's fine. And if you want to just cover those first two questions together, the discussions that you had with your company and senior management, and what were those arguments that you made regarding either time away or for financial support to be in the program?
Yeah, absolutely. Preparing for today's session, it certainly took me back to those early days of anxiety and nervousness of how am I going to position this, 18-month, 19-month program, the cost associated with the, the support I was asking for my company. So I can certainly appreciate how difficult it can be to approach those conversations. I will certainly say I started those conversations first with my spouse or your partner, and then certainly segued that into, what does this mean from a career perspective? So, if I think about that first line there and discussions with company and senior management, I started with my direct manager, and from there, those conversations certainly escalated in terms of talking about additional time off, and also the company's financial support. So my first piece of advice is to start early. So have those conversations early on to allow the organization to have the time to assess the request that you're making. And then be very clear. So be very clear with the plan and very clear with your intention. So I can remember sitting down with my manager that day, sharing the curriculum, sharing the schedule, talking about the time off needs, but also talking about what I think I could personally gain from this program, and then in turn what the organization would gain. So I was very clear about that intention, and I consider myself fortunate because for a couple of years up to making the decision to go back to graduate school, I had talked to the organization about, do I need that? Do I need that to be successful here? Do I need that to be promoted here? And so I had kind of an open door to have those conversations of, I think I'm ready, and here's how I think it can benefit my continued progress. So it was about a year after graduation is what landed me in this manufacturing role, which definitely is a different business environment. And so I can remember having those conversations of, as part of my personal development, I know I need resources and support in, finance and accounting, supply chain, and change management. I mean, pretty much every course would tick that box, knowing I had primarily a background in human resources. So I think being very clear on, what it meant to me, how it would support me, and what that meant for my future within the company was definitely a place that I started. I think also being clear about what I was willing to do versus what I needed the company to do for me. And so it's not always easy to ask for exactly what you want or exactly what you need. But I think there was an art of compromise in there, right? So I knew what time away I was going to need or how I might need to adjust my schedule, or, I used many lunch hours to read a couple of chapters. And, what was so beautiful about this program is you really can tailor it around your schedule. So that certainly helped me survive. But, being very clear of, I'm going to need additional time off, whether that's paid or unpaid, but was very clear up front of, this is what it's going to take. But of course, here's what I'm willing to do to make it work. Because, this did mean so much to me, and was certainly something that I wanted to do, and preferably wanted to do it with the company's support. So that, I think maybe I blended those two questions in, but, starting with my direct manager, and then those conversations kind of kept going forward. And then my argument was, this is an investment in me, but also a future investment in the company. So through that support I got through Cummins, if you've been looking through tuition support through your company, most oftentimes it comes with a retention period, right? So this was my, also commitment to say, here's how I plan to pay it forward. So feel very fortunate that I had the company support. If I didn't, I don't know if it would have been as easy for me to try to juggle a full-time career and work. So I definitely advocate to try to get that buy-in and try to get it early on.
Thank you. And you raised the two parts of the discussion. It's not just financial, but it is the time away. And as I say in my other webinars, our EMBA 101 webinars, which we'll have next month, is you can do a weekend, evening, or online MBA and your company would never know. You can't do our program without your company knowing it all. Say, why is Brian going to West Lafayette for vacation again? That people are going to ask. And so it does force maybe some very important conversations, because, part of the goal of doing the MBA is to move up in your organization. And so what does that look like? If I can ask, what was your retention time agreement? Or if you don't want to share for Cummins, maybe from some of the fellow students?
Yeah, generally it was between 2 and 5 years after the last payment was received. And so that was another benefit through the EMBA was its payments over 3 years. So it made each year's incremental cost a little bit less, but from a retention, 2 to 5 years post that last payment received.
Thank you. Typically 2 to 3, I think, is the most common. 5 is a bit at the highest in terms of what I've heard. So thank you. Brian, same questions. If you can share with us how that process looked for you.
Yeah, and I'll start with your last question because I'm comfortable sharing. So my agreement was 3 years. I kind of knew the landscape of the business though, and I said, if there's a change of control or something like that, we need to consider that. So you've got to be thinking about where your business is at and kind of what the commitment is, and like Anna said, what they're going to get out of you after you complete the program. Mine started on the day of graduation. So I guess technically it's 5 years of time, but it's 3 years post completion. I really liked all the points Anna said, so I won't rehash too many of them. I think I would just add that it shouldn't really be a surprise to anyone. You kind of need to build some momentum heading into this. And that's what I'd worked on for a while with my organization. I knew my boss would be on board, but I also knew my boss would have to get approval from the board of directors. So I tried to make sure as many of my senior stakeholders as possible kind of knew this was an interest of mine, and they knew that I was willing and looking to grow with the organization. So the other side of it is I'm a finance guy, I'm an accountant. So I made a spreadsheet, and I knew one of my objectives was to be in a top ranked program within 5 hours of Cleveland, Ohio. And so I drew a ring and I figured out where all of the different programs are that fit that initial criteria. And then I started to put everything else into a bucket and say, okay, will this fit into my life? Will it fit into my work life, my home life, and everything else? And I used all of those points to say that it was the right program for me, and that it was the right value, and I defined the value proposition by using them.
So follow-up question for you, Brian, and then Anna as well. What type of pushback or counter arguments did you receive? Because I know you, Brian, and I know you went in well prepared, but I'm sure it wasn't, sounds good, let's move it forward. There probably was some sort of pushback. So if there's anything that you can share on that.
Yeah, we were a smaller organization, so it was going to be a large consumption of my time, and I had a team to lead, and that was a big concern for a lot of people, and that really pushed me towards this format, which fit really well. It's, hey, every now and then I'm going to disappear for a week or two at a time. Otherwise, I'm going to fit it into my day. I'm not going to burn out by going to night school. I'm not going to burn out by effectively working 7 days a week with a weekend program. Instead, this will fit both for my benefit as well. So navigating that in advance was pretty important.
Thank you. Same question for you, Anna.
Yeah, I think the two initial responses were, the first one was about the time commitment. And are you being realistic with yourself that you can be a full-time employee and a full-time student? So I think it took a little bit of convincing to say, between sheer determination and careful planning, I do believe I can do both. And there's many cohorts ahead of me that have successfully proven they can do both. But doing my research, right, talking to program administrators, talking to past students, but I think I needed to sell it that I could do both just as well as I was doing my single job today. And then the other part was the financial aspect. So with the cost of the program, I was fortunate that I received more than our standard tuition assistance. And so why was it worth it? So there was a little bit of a kind of that same, here's my progression, my commitment to the company, but also doing research on other programs. So to that point, I don't know if it was as cool as a spreadsheet, but to say here are other relatively similar programs versus value versus quality, and showing it to them from a numbers perspective as well helped.
Awesome, thank you. Back to you, Brian. So you mentioned you had a team. So one thing I've seen with our students is regardless of how good they are at delegation, they all get better going through the program. Is that something that you found this as an opportunity to develop people that were on your team?
Yeah, you know what was fun is you have to figure out how to keep the business running and how to keep things going at home. But you also learn a little bit about delegating with new people that you don't know very well, or at least you don't know very well at the start. So that was a learning for me. I've had teams for a long time, but when you kind of drop for 2 weeks at a time, and it's you don't, it's not like a vacation where you kind of pick the time and you know when you're not going to be busy. You know well in advance when those times are, but there is some prep work that goes into it. So absolutely that's actually probably one of the biggest things I think I took from the program. And it's one of the things that I share with a lot of folks. You get a very comprehensive view of the business environment. You take all the classes that covers everything. But this is a really great chance to see how much you can delegate, balance, and kind of keep spinning at the same time. And I think you learn a lot when you're doing that.
Thank you. Anna, anything, because I know you had a different type of team environment, but how did those relationships change for you?
Yeah, I certainly relied on colleagues and family members. I definitely didn't graduate by myself. I think while I didn't have a team, or I didn't lead an organization at that time, I did certainly learn the value of time and how to make the most of your time. And sometimes I question, how did I make it work? But maybe I was just not, I was a little wasteful with my time before. But again, I think having a supportive manager, supportive organization, and yeah, when you start day one, I mean, you know exactly what the next 18, 19 months are going to entail. So I certainly put my planning skills to use in that way.
I got nervous, Aldous, when you were running through the schedule, just like kicking off the program. But looking back, you are amazed that you're actually able to get it done. And it's incredible looking back at that.
And you both did very well. One more follow-up question. So over the years I've been in this role, certainly a fear that managers have as well. I'm not going to hear from Brian or Anna for 2 weeks. And what I tell potential applicants is, even though, yes, the weeks are very full and your dedication is to your cohort and the learning, there is some time to reply to emails. So I tell people, I think it's safe to say you can carve out about an hour and a half per day to return phone calls and emails on a typical day. Would you agree with that? And or what would you say about your availability while you were in residency? So Brian first and then Anna on that question.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely fair. And that's the minimum, I think, to some extent. If you have some big things going on, you can certainly find more time. You will miss out on maybe on some of the social things that happen with the cohort, but you're not stopping everything. The emails can come through if you have to step out. The class formats really lend themselves well to that in the emergencies. And there's plenty of breaks throughout the day to kind of catch up as you go.
And on the schedule that we are looking at here, I think 2 slides or 1 slide ago, indeed, the breaks are built in. There's a 30-minute mid-morning break, a 30-minute mid-afternoon break, an hour for lunch. And it is for that reason, so that if there is a quick phone call or email that has to be responded to. So you're actually in the classroom about 6 hours a day, meaning you're not in the classroom 18 hours a day. So there is a bit of that ability to stay connected. So thank you for sharing. Anna?
I would agree. I certainly thought that there was time to do both. I did try to draw boundaries though, because I really wanted to be immersed for the time that we had at campus, because it was limited and I didn't want that distraction. But it does happen, right? So I'm a kind of an early riser. So part of that agreement was, check an email kind of morning, noon, and before bed type of thing, just to keep kind of up to date on what needed to be addressed versus what could wait. And, maybe the compromise was 30 minutes of lunch so I could catch up with my cohort and kind of relax and unplug and schedule and things as needed. But while I tried to stay focused, I think admittedly there was an ability to balance important, urgent things that needed attention at work versus staying focused on the coursework.
Awesome, thank you. Is there anything else that you would recommend to people, either on the financial side, time management, or just working with your company to make your process work for the program? I'll stay with Anna first and then to Brian. Any other words of advice on this particular topic?
Yeah, I think my parting comments would be, don't be afraid to ask. So I put together a very ambitious plan and I got exactly what I had asked for. So I wonder sometimes if I'd compromised or not asked, if there would have been a different outcome. So I'd say put together your plan, start early, and don't be afraid to ask for what you need to be successful in the program.
Awesome, thank you. Brian?
Yeah, I completely echo that. I think looking back, I had a situation where my tuition was covered. And then, other people I know, their travel was covered, or it was grossed up to cover taxes, or, a whole range, or it was 50%. So I think that's right. I think you have your kind of value proposition in mind. You have what you hope to get kind of in mind, and you probably check in with a few people along the way to make sure that it fits with what the organization might expect.
Perfect, thank you. And I like, be open and honest and see where it goes is always a good starting point. A theme today that's come up has been, start early in the process. I can share that with this past year and people adjusting to COVID, the time that people are involved in looking at our program has gone up a little bit. In the past, it's been about 10 months on average. The most recent cohort from when they first expressed interest to the start of the program was 16 months. The longest person was 5.5 years, and the shortest was 2 weeks. So indeed, a wide range on that. But if people are saying, well, I've been thinking for 3 years, maybe it's too late. 3 years is not too late. I've spoken with people that have thought about it for a decade, and it just wasn't right. One thing I think Brian and Anna will agree on is there's never going to be a perfect time to start in the EMBA. There are bad times. And I'm sure in both of their situations, there was something that probably happened a month before launch. They're like, well, maybe I should wait. But they both went forward and turned out to be good times, I believe, appropriate times for them. And they probably say, oh, I'm glad I did it when I did it. So, that's just another final thing. Give it a try, and you'll see that you can truly do more than maybe what you think is possible. One more topic, since I lead the scholarship process here within our programs, is in terms of eligibility. Our goal is that people between savings, loans, company support, and scholarship can cover the cost of the program. It's still $85,000 this year, going up to $90,000 for next year. I think both Brian and Anna talked about the value of the program. If you take for the Midwest, we are of schools of our caliber, the least expensive. Depending which rating you look at, we're number 6 in the Midwest. The 5 schools above us, if you take their average tuition, is about double our tuition. And I'm sure they believe they provide additional value. I'm not always sure given how much we are able to do. Again, as a public university, as a land-grant university, we have a different mandate in mind. So the scholarship is open to everyone. It is a holistic approach that we take, looking at, are you at a for-profit or not-for-profit, looking at your work experience, looking at as well the industry that you may be in, work experience. So many pieces coming together that come into in how much you're self-funded versus corporate funded. All those pieces come into play to make that scholarship decision. So don't assume that you're not eligible. Certainly reach out to me on that, and I can always guide people through that particular process. So I think the panel today, I think between all of us, we've been able to cover a lot of the financial questions, be it on the loans part for veteran support, and in Brian, just in dealing and working with your companies as well, and as well the scholarship part. And so really this slide together it's possible to create that financial plan to cover the cost of the program. And we'll talk after on the next slide, what are some of the impacts that people have from being in the program. So in terms of career impact, a survey from The Economist last year was close to 80% of alums are promoted within 2 years of graduation. My estimate is about another 15% are promoted while they are in the program. So we're in the mid 90s in terms of that career impact. Salary impact comes with that as well. And salary is great, but it's the fact that you're able to have greater impact in your career and find work that's more fulfilling. And that's why you're wanting to be in the MBA, to have that leverage. As mentioned earlier, we have the career support through assessments, self-discovery, and the skill building is part of that, personal brand development, and then a career management consultant to guide you. And we talked a little bit about networks, and that's why we have you together for the 2 weeks at a time. Everyone in Ann and Brian, give me a thumbs up if you agree. But all of our alums say, I figured I'd meet a few new people. I never thought it'd be everyone in the cohort. And so one of our alums a year before Anna actually said, I was told about these lifelong friendships, and I didn't think it was true, but I was wrong. And so this one is from the Cascade Mountains in the northwest of the US. And these 3 people, they're not like all in the same city. They are in different locations across the US, California, Colorado, and Indiana and Missouri. He's kind of traveling between 2 locations. But that, and these are just 3 people. But it is the bonds that form that are critical. And we believe these bonds that form cannot be formed through an online program or when you just see people from 7 to 10 p.m. on an evening. When you're together for 2 weeks at a time, you get to know each other in the cohort, good or bad. You know the quirks, you know the strengths, you know what people are going through. But that's what we believe makes a format such as ours most rewarding. Financing, we've talked about here, and that's been our focus today. As mentioned, it is tuition. It's not all paid up front, but there are multiple tuition payments during your time in the program. And here as well, you have Kirsten Reynolds' email that you can contact her. I'm sure our alums are available to answer any other questions that you may have, be it on this or anything else about the program. In terms of next steps or navigating the path, if you've not done so, we encourage you to submit your resume to us for review, and we will give our assessment if we think there's a good fit and about a GMAT waiver. If you're interested in other programs, and we think you should be, as Brian said, he drew that picture, five-hour radius. I think we were right at the cusp of 5 hours from Cleveland. So 4 hours and 58 minutes. I'm glad we made that. But you should be looking at other programs because you're going to do an MBA one time and you want to make sure it's a good fit for you. So we provide data on up to 3 other EMBA programs. I don't remember if we did that for Anna or for Brian, but if we did, I hope they found that useful. We'll connect you with our program alums. Anna had also participated in a professional development program earlier that year, if I recall. So that kind of gave her a feel for what our programs were like. So there's different ways to learn more. Have those discussions, certainly internally. Next month, we're going to have an alum join me as we'll do a deeper dive into our program. So all of you are welcome to join then. And seeing a program, our programs in action is a great way to learn more. So next week and the week after, you have the opportunity to come here to campus or join us virtually as well. Not everyone can make it to campus, but we have dates on our website for April, May, or June to come and see what it's like to be a student for half a day. Meet the staff, myself, meet current students, sit in on the class. Brian, did you take advantage of that? I can't remember, I apologize.
I didn't. I might have been one of your 2-week candidates, Aldous. Sorry.
That's fine. And Anna, I know you were here for the other program.
That's right. So that was my introduction, and I actually didn't do any other pre-campus visits, but well, I think my 4 years of undergraduate for solidifying that second choice decision.
Sure. And at the time, Brian, we might not have had the virtual option, but it's standard practice as well. So lessons learned from our side. The online application, fairly straightforward. Upload your resume, 3 required essays, and then the scholarship essay, 2 references, original transcripts, and the interview. We're doing those through Zoom right now, 90 minutes with myself and the second member of our admissions team. And if you're admitted, get ready to be challenged. Anna and Brian have been sharing their experiences, the benefits. The word easy, I don't think ever came up, except to say it's not easy, but it's challenging and rewarding, certainly. So in terms of deadlines, so we're admitting students for both this fall and for next spring. So June, July, and August, different deadlines. I'll focus on the July 15th and January 7th deadlines for priority scholarship review, if that's important to you. And then, as indicated, both program launches are online. And then for the traditional, the first trip to campus will be in November of this year. And then for the Global Executive MBA, the first trip to campus will be in June of next year. I will reiterate, as was said earlier, Purdue has been open since last July. Purdue took about a 3-month pause due to COVID of having on-campus activities, but we've been having residencies pretty much every month since last July here, of course, in a safe environment. If that's still a concern for anyone, certainly feel free to reach out. So as we're wrapping up, I'm just gonna give one more word to Brian and Anna. Any other broader, not just on financial, but any words of advice to people that are thinking of doing an EMBA program?
Nothing else, Aldous, other than what you said. There's never a perfect time, and just kind of put your thought behind it, and if it's something you want to do, then you should chase it.
Awesome, thank you. Anna?
Yeah, I would agree. And what I would add is, working with this team, this course, this program delivered on the expectations. So through the presentation, we talk a lot about networks and relationships and the coursework and the rigor of the program, and it certainly lived up to those expectations.
Thank you, good to know. And glad to see that you're both doing well, and thank you both for joining. Also to Teresa and Kirsten, thank you for joining as well. If any of our potential applicants joining today have any other questions, certainly feel free to reach out. We're here to help in any stage of the process, either for this year or maybe it's 2 years from now, whatever works best for you. Purdue will be here, and we'll be here to help out as well. So with that, I thank everyone for joining today. Look forward to hearing from you and wish you a great rest of the week. Take care.